Hello, I'm Jana, and welcome back to the Crafty Corner. This week over at the Funkie Junkie Inspiration Avenue blog, we are creating to the theme of It's All in the Details. This is going to be really fun. I love adding detailed work to my card making. Today, I'm going to be focusing on using Crackle paste to create crackling details in our background with a combination of distress glazes. If you'd like to see exactly which materials I'm going to be using, go ahead and pause here. All right, let's head over to the Crafty Corner. Today is all about details. To start our card, we're going to be using some of the Tim Holtz Distress White Heavy Stock and some Crackle paste. To spread the Crackle paste, we're going to be using one of the Ranger palette knives and stencil THS 162. So we're going to be placing the stencil down onto our paper, but to make sure that everything is staying in place, I am going to be bringing in some of the media grip. I find that this helps keep everything in place and hold my stencil steady as I am adding texture paste. Today we're going to be using one of my favorite Tim Holtz techniques. This is going to be adding distress glaze over the top of the Crackle paste once we are done stenciling. Right now I am smoothing the Crackle paste onto the Distress White Heavy Stock, and I'm laying down a fairly healthy layer, kind of the consistency of peanut butter on toast. And I want to make sure that we have plenty of texture paste on there. We don't want to completely cover and hide the stencil. That would be too much. But we want to apply this evenly. So I've got my first corner done. Now I want to add another segment of roses up in the top corner. These stencils could be used to completely cover a card with the pattern, but I like to break the stencil up and use different segments on the card. Since this is a background, I'm trying to place this in places in the background that will still be visible after we add our focal point. So let's just finish up scraping off the last bit of Crackle paste. We'll put that right back into the jar. Smooth this out just a little bit so we don't have anything that's too clumpy. And then we're going to be getting out the distress glazes. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and finish wiping off the palette knife, and we will set these tools aside for the moment. Now, the second I am done with the glaze, I'm going to be dousing these items into some warm water to make sure that this doesn't harden. But because it's a bit dry today, I'm going to be immediately applying the distress glaze over the top of the Crackle paste because I have a feeling things are going to be drying very quickly today. And the stenciling looks pretty good. We have a little bit of spill over onto the media grip, but that is easy enough to wipe off with a little bit of water. So very quickly, just removing that, and we're going to be putting down a piece of scrap paper and pulling out the glazes. For the distress glazes today, we're going to be using Salty Ocean and Wilted Violet. These are going to be two lovely cool colors to work into our background. Alright, so we have the open jars. Now I'm just going to take a little pinch of the Salty Ocean and start sprinkling it over the top of the flowers. And I'm just using a little twisting motion with my fingers to get the powder to spread evenly. If we don't cover everything up, that is absolutely okay because we're going to shuffle the distress glaze around once I have my colors pretty much where I want them. And that will help us get good coverage. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. I think I might need just a little bit more purple in places. I really want to have a kind of blue-purple gradient going on back here. I'm thinking that's going to look pretty good for the card that I have in mind. Alright, now we're just going to shuffle the distress glaze around. I'm just tapping on the back with my fingers, trying to get this to bounce a little bit and cover the spots. If we have some spots that did not get enough glaze, we can always go back and sprinkle a little bit on. And it does look like I've got one or two little spots that need just a touch more glaze. And you know what? I'm just going to use the party mix. That will work since we're going for a mix of blue and purple anyway. Alright, just make sure that's covered. Tapping that off. Adding a little bit more down here to one little leaf. I'm just going to tap that down gently with my finger. Hopefully that doesn't smush. And a little bit in that space down there. All right. So now we're going to set this aside and let it dry. I don't think this is going to take very long to dry today. Today has been very warm with a high of 75 degrees this morning. So we're going to set that aside right in front of the window, and we'll come back to that after it's dried. Now, let's move on to our main focal point. Here we are using the new Idea-Ology stitched frame, and we're going to be altering that with a bit of Distress ink. I have some Distress ink vintage photo on this mini blending tool, and we're going over the entire frame to highlight the stitching. The stitching is naturally white, kind of a little bit of off-white on the frame, but I want to darken it up to give it a bit more of a vintage look. Okay, so that's looking really good. The stitching is now popping a bit more. So the next thing that we're going to do will be to add a layer. I'm going to be pulling in one of the transparent layers from this year's new Idea-Ology. These are so cool. They've got the florals and the text on there, and that is going to fit really nicely into our frame. So on the back of the frame, I'm going to be adding a little bit of collage medium, and then we'll be placing the transparent layer on the back. Once the glue has dried a bit, then I will trim off the extra pieces. So we're just adding a few dots around the edge, and now we're going to take that transparent layer and line it up. So we're just going to place this down. I'm aiming for the far left hand side corner because that has the floral element, and I think that's going to show up really nicely over our background. Okay, pretty good. So we're just going to set that down and give that a little press to make sure everything's going to stick together. Good. I am liking how everything has neatly lined up. That should be a great landing spot. Now, another part of the focal point is going to be this fantastic bird from Organic Layers. We're just going to add that into the corner of our frame, but we're also going to be adding a floral element as well. In the meantime, let's go ahead and snip off that little bit of overhang from the transparent layer. So we're just taking some of the tonic Tim Holtz scissors, and we're just going to snip that extra bit off. There. And we'll just work around to the other side and cut that down. Maybe I can save this scrap and use it in another project. I really like this, so that might make an interesting collage piece for a future project. Okay, good. So we'll just remove that, and there is the background of the focal point. I really do like how that transparent layer shows up. That is really cool. Next, we're going to start the construction of the flower. So I took some different scraps, and let's see, this one has some collage paper on it, and then I have a solid piece from the Cool Tone Craft Stock stash, and we're going to be layering this flower up. Now, the die set that I have decided to use is Modern Floristry. This is a nice flower, and it's not remotely symmetrical, which I really like for when I'm trying to offset the petals. So we're going to put our different colored purple layers together to build our flower. So these are the first two layers. Now for the third layer, I went with a very brightly colored scrap made from Distress inks, but we're going to give this scrap some dimension with the Tim Holtz Sizzix shaping kit and tools. So we're just taking the tool and rubbing along the edges of the petal to make them curl up. This will give us a nice flowery shape and adds a little bit of dimensional interest to the card. So just pressing along each of the petals after doing small circles in the center of the flower to get everything to curl. Okay, so I'm liking the shape of this. We're now going to attach that to the flower with a dash of collage medium. Just a little bit on the back, and we will stick these 3 layers together. Okay, there's the third layer. Now I'm going to get a little bit more collage medium, and we're going to be adding the center of the flower. The center was also die cut out of some of the Cool Tone Purple craft stock, and that will finish off the flower, which we will then attach to the focal point background. Okay, Now I did use double-sided sticky tape on the other 2 layers of flour, so this is ready to be stuck right to the frame. Now let's go ahead and add the bird. But first, I want to tone down that white halo around the bird. And to do that, we're going to be using a bit of Distress Ink Vintage Photo. Just going around the edges with the mini ink tool and just blending that out. So our bird is going to camouflage a little bit better onto our background. So just carefully flicking around the edges, making sure we have good inky coverage. And now we can go ahead and attach the bird to the frame. To do that, we're going to be using a few dots of Collage Medium. I'm just going to add a few dots all over the bird, and then we will stick that right down onto our frame. So let's see, we're going to place this just about here. That should be good. A little bit of overhang isn't going to be a problem since the focal point is much smaller than the background. Then we're going to take the flower and place that in the bottom left corner. Just going to tilt that a little bit, see what angle is going to be best for it to fit onto the frame. So here is our finished focal point. We have given this flower a little bit of dimension by using the Tim Holtz Idea-ology shaping tools, and this will look quite nice. I am loving the little details with the written words on the transparency of this piece. We double layered with a frame and then the transparency, and then over the top we've got the bird and our flower. All right, let's go back and see how our background is doing. So we sprinkled this backdrop with some Wilted Violet and some Broken China Distress powders over Crackle paste. This looks good. So we are now going to put this next part on fast forward as I take an embossing gun and heat up our Crackle and Distress glaze. I am using the Sizzix embossing gun today. So let's go ahead and see what we get. Okay, let's take a closer look at how this came out. I like the detail on this. This is pretty good. Now the next thing I'm going to do will be to add another color to our backdrop. To do that, I'm going to be pulling in some Distress Spray Stain Speckled Egg. First, let's go ahead and give this a quick mist. Not bad. And now a little bit of the Distress Spray Stain. And then we will quickly dry it off. Okay, not bad. I'm going to turn this off for a moment while I give this a quick dry. So we've got our background dried off a bit. Now I'm just going to go in with some droplets of water, and that should pretty much finish off the background. But I am thinking I might go in with some distress ink and distress the edges of this as well. So let's go ahead and add our water droplets. That's good. This is good, but I'm thinking I want to add another color to this. I am going to grab a little bit of pumice stone, just for a little bit of contrast. Yeah, there we go. Just looked like it needed to be darkened up just a little bit. And we'll blend that in with a bit of water. Okay. Not terrible, a little bit more spray-like than I want, but given that we are working on the Distress White Heavy Stock, this is to be expected. However, I do like how pumice stone is able to get some interesting secondary tones in here, so it will work. All right, now I'm going to be going in with the blending tool, and I'm going to be adding just a little bit of Vintage Photo ink around the edges. But first I'm going to quickly wipe up my space. There, it's better. Now, I'm just going to go around the edges, darken that up a bit more. There we go. Now I'm liking this. Just keep working our way around, and then we can attach the focal point. There. I don't know what it is. I just love adding Vintage Photo to pretty much everything. It's a great color, And it always gives that wonderful distressed look that I love. Okay, I am pretty happy with that. Let's grab our focal point and just see how that's going to look over the top. Oh yeah, I like that a lot. So to attach this, I am going to be using some foam squares. Let me go ahead and pull a few in. Let's see. I think I'll need about 6. Okay, I'll just flip that over, maybe less. 1, 2, 3. Yep, it's going to be 6. One more here. And the last one goes over here. Good. Now I'll just quickly take those backings off and we can attach this to the card base. Okay, so flipping this over, and I want to tuck that little string right there. Oh, while I'm thinking about it, I also want to add a few more details to this, but I wanted to check placement first. First thing I want to do is add a little collage strip on the top. I'm going to need a little bit of collage medium, and I'm also going to overlay that with a Idea-Ology paperclip. Since we're talking details, when I think details, I think of the little things that make a project extra special. So that's just going to go here. Then we'll take the paperclip, and that's going to go here. Okay. And while I'm looking at this, I do want to tuck in a few more pieces of ephemera. But I think I'll stick this down and then I can squeeze the other pieces in. All right, this is good. That seems pretty centered. Okay, so I have some of the little bits and pieces of ephemera from this year's Idea-Ology release, and we're going to be adding these to the card, just kind of tucking them in a couple of places. Just a little bit more interest. Let's see. I like that. And over here, let's tuck those postage stamps under the flower. That's good. Yep, that can go there. And I'll stick this over here. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I just want to add those 4 additional pieces. All right, let's go ahead and glue those down. And then the last thing we will need will be our sentiment. Good. Okay, and this one. Now, adding in the little pieces at the end, I always find that to be really fun. This is where a very basic card can become more complex and gain visual interest. Okay, now these 2 up here. And in case we didn't notice, I am mostly using ephemera that has been in the cool tone family of blues, purples, and greens, then taking the focal point with a splash of color using a contrasting color of yellow. Okay, and this piece. Good. Last thing, we need a sentiment. So for the sentiment today, I'm going to be pulling from the Tim Holtz metallic sticker pack. And we're going to be using one of the gold and white stickers. So let's see what we have here. You know what? Let's go with Adventure, Live Simply. That's a good one. That has a very spring vibe to it for me. You know what? We're going to tuck that right under here. good. Okay. There we go. Thank you so much for joining me here today at the Crafty Corner. Today we've been creating to the theme of it's all in the details. And I think that we definitely achieved details in this card. We have got the fine detailing of the Crackle paste in the background overlaid with distress glazes. Then we layered up a transparent element along with a stitched frame. If that stitching isn't detailed, I don't know what is, but I love it. And then we also paid special attention to the flower focal point. This flower was layered up with multiple layers of paper in different colors and was then shaped with the Tim Holtz Sizzix shaping tool. If you'd like to see the written version of this project, go ahead and click the link down in the description box. And if you would like to see more inspiration, check out the Funkie Junkie Inspiration Ave blog. The link will also be down in the description box. And until next time, happy crafting!